Hey, what's up everyone? This is Faja, and we are back again today with another production video. So today we're gonna go over my remix of On the Floor by JLo and Pitbull. A lot of people seem to really like this track. It's a bit of a Eurodance and techno kind of hybrid vibe. So we're gonna go through all the layers and each piece of it and see what I can teach you guys about it. So let's get into it. So as usual, we're gonna start off by dissecting the foundation of the track, which is the percussion, the drums. So here I just pulled up this kick. I think it was from one of my hyper techno kick packs. It's like a nice kind of thick kick. But what I did was, as usual, I put on kick tweak. I actually used preset number 6 this time though. I often use 5, but we use number 6. And then as usual, I added my transient shaper. I put on just a bit of attack and a little bit of sustain. Just kind of give it some extra punch and body. And then I had done like a little bit of a boost in the low mids on it. I had felt the need just a tad. And then as always, I use LFO tool to shape the envelope of my kick. So I cut it out at the halfway point. That way the upbeat bass of it is playing right where it stops. So nothing is bleeding into each other at all. It makes it very clean. Then I'm gonna show you guys kind of my claps and hats here. So I got a really nice, just clean hi-hat. Very nice and like open. So I use transient shaper to add a little bit of like attack to it. I use Oxford inflator, which I don't know, just kind of added like a nice thickness and warmth to it. And then OTT I find just kind of tightens everything up. So I often will use like transient shapers like that and then an OTT after, and it just makes everything you did just sound even tighter. I often put it around 27 to like 35% on many of my percussions and even leads as well. Just a little bit just to tighten it, and then I boosted the highs just a tad. And then just a final EQ, nothing crazy. I just kind of dipped that piece of it. And then soothe to really tame and clean up any frequencies that it might have been coming up a little too sharp or whatnot. Okay, let's look at the clap. I think this was from my hyper techno pack too. So I use a bit of OTT again just to tighten it up. And then what I also did was I had PsyQ, and as you guys have probably seen in many of my other videos, I use it to boost highs because it sounds great. So I just kind of made those that top end of the clap really sparkle. And then I use a little bit of a transient shaper to also, again, add some more punch to it, and then a little bit of body, and then just kind of EQ'd it up to really sit it nice in the mix. Then you're gonna notice too, I have this hi-hat loop. I brought down the highs of it a little bit because I was making room for both the vocals and then the actual hi-hat that I put in, the main one. Well, first though, I actually used transient shaper to actually, bring out the transients of it. And then OTT as usual to tighten up about 30%. Side widener, that way it's kind of like there's the main hi-hat in the middle, which I showed earlier. And then the loop is kind of spread because it has like these other rhythms in it, and I want it to spread around while the main focus is in the middle. So you got that. And then, well, the stereo filter, which is just, I use as an effects. And then I have Soothe, which is actually just cleaning up the top end a little bit. So yeah, I often use it on hats and even claps sometimes just to really clean things up and make things clear. Okay, now moving on to my bass. So basically what I did was I pulled up this preset from Spire that I downloaded. It's pretty much like a show me love kind of bass, and I just tweaked it a tad. And what we got here is pretty simple, my typical kind of Shane. So just a little bit of transient shaper to add a bit of punch, OTT to tighten it up a bit more, and I boosted the highs on it a little bit more than usual because I really wanted to bring out that top end sparkle of it, because the natural preset didn't really have much of that. And then I just fattened things up a little bit with sausage fattener. It kind of like saturates everything. And then next, I boosted the low end with PsyQ because it was just kind of lacking a little bit. And then I needed additional sub to be boosted. So as you've probably seen in my other tutorials, what I did was I took the note to frequency chart and I took the root note of the key and then boosted it. So that was around 39 hertz. I did an extreme boost because this preset naturally did not have a ton of sub, and I didn't want to add a separate sub to it because I found that when I was high passing or removing those sub frequencies from this bass, it didn't sound good. I wanted to use the built-in sub from the sound, and so I used sub filter to help bring that out a bunch. Then just LS tool as an effects, and then LFO tool. So it's carved pretty hard and basically does not bleed into the kick. Then next is the main element of the drop. So I'm just gonna kind of like mix it in. So you can see it's kind of like a little bit of a, I don't know, like a show me love kind of bass. And what we got here is pretty simple, my typical kind of Shane. So just a little bit of transient shaper to add a bit of punch, OTT to tighten it up a about 30%. Then next is the main element of the drop. So this is like one of my kind of signature leads that I use a ton. So it is actually a preset within Nexus. And then the key sauce to it is kind of the reverb, how you mess with the reverb, but even more so just how you process it after. So I have a bit of just an EQ first on it. And then I use, oh, okay, Camel Crush isn't working again, so ignore that. Sound Goodizer though is very key. I actually really like Sound Goodizer for some leads because randomly it will work extremely well. And it's cool too because if you're in Ableton, you can't make it sound like this lead. So it's I have my own special little thing here. And then Oxford Inflator just kind of beefens it up a little bit more. I often like using that on leads. OTT to tighten things up a little bit as usual. Fab Filter just to EQ again. SiQ to boost some highs again. Sidewinder just to add some stereo width, and I boosted the stereo width quite a bit, so I put it on classic balanced and then widened that a bit. So I don't know, I just really like how it filled up the space. All right, so now we got LFO tool, and basically that's just sidechaining it. I didn't sidechain it all the way down because I needed that lead just to sit a little bit higher up, and yeah, it just sounded best having it positioned in the mix that way. So yeah, you can think of LFO tool and how much you dip it as kind of how much it's gonna sit high up in the mix. So the less you sidechain it, the higher up it'll be. The lower you sidechain it, the lower it'll be. So I think because of that bass line that's pretty in your face, it forced me to put the lead a little higher up above it. And then basically we just got a bunch of like random effects here. So it's nothing crazy, it's just little shots. There's like some drums, there's like these claps that I layered. Those are just like some reverb claps, and then acid shots. So these are all just like random shots and stuff that you can honestly get in any sort of sample pack. So just add some sparkle to the track, and it also fills up space because of course this melody, as you're gonna see here, there's a gap there. There's a big gap. So I need to fill it up somehow. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna add some percussion, some shots, and that's gonna keep it interesting, keep it flowing. Anyways, we're gonna move down to the breakdown real quick now. Both breakdowns are actually more or less the same. In the second one, there's a little bit of extra elements to it. So maybe I'm just gonna actually show the second breakdown. So basically what we got here are pads first. So that's actually just like a simple Spire preset, a very nice kind of saw pad. Spire is very nice and full naturally, so I use it. So we got SiQ, bringing down some of the lows. I got OTT, Sidewinder, Fab Filter. So it's pretty generic chain for what I usually do. And then a little bit of Soothe just to kind of tame some of the highs as the filter opens up on it. Then we got Sustain String. I add tension strings in like so many of my tracks. It just kind of fills things up and then also adds a little bit of suspense or something interesting on those breakdowns. Then I got kind of that same drop bass, but it's on the breakdown instead. So that's like pretty much what's playing in the original track. I absolutely love that bass because it has like such like a 2000 kind of pop feel. Like that era of pop was really cool that I love. So added on the breakdown, the usual transient shaper, a little bit of OTT, sausage fattener, and SiQ. So again, what my chains are is pretty much just like saturating things, boosting, and then maybe removing, and then just adding final EQ to really balance everything within the mix. Then this is a conga chain that I made, a conga loop that I made, and it's actually replicated off of an old Eurodance track. I can't remember the name of it, but I made this loop and then put it in. It's actually just like a bunch of Cashmere samples that I programmed, so that's kind of cool, but it sounds just like the track that I was replicating. So side widener, just to, widen it a bit, and then Fab Filter to just kind of bring out some of the lows because there's already a lot going on in the low end. And then I have an MJUC here, which is just balancing the peaks. So, and then Soothe again, just to control some random little spikes. Then lastly, we just have some like random effects. So there's some stadium claps. Find these in like any Cashmere pack. And again, just my typical percussion kind of processing. I got OTT, transient shaper just to make things tight and punchy. And then a bit of SiQ to boost the highs because it sounds great. And then a final Fab Filter just to kind of balance the levels and whatnot. And then MGUC and Soothe to control all sorts of peaks and volumes. And we also got to some random little effects. So yeah, that just kind of helps fill things up, and just adds, some more progression and flow to the general breakdown. And then lastly, I add in this like little top piano. So that's like a pretty like classic like Nexus piano. Like it's kind of like the type of piano that Avicii would probably use, And it has a built-in Nexus reverb that I use. I actually really like the built-in Nexus reverb, and if you put OTT after that, it actually sounds great. I think it's my friend Kevin from Wildcards. He had actually talked to me once about how a lot of their leads on their tracks, which were supported by people like the Chainsmokers and stuff, a lot of their leads were, layers of Nexus with their built-in reverb and then just a bunch of OTT on it. So it honestly works well. So I use SciQ just to boost the highs a bit, OTT, sausage fattener to thicken all up after it gets tight, and then transient shaper just to add a little bit of a punch to that piano. I really wanted to hear like that. I really wanted that transient to punch through. Sidewinder to fill up the space, and I put classic extreme because I just wanted this like top piano to just really, fill up everywhere right in your face. Right at the top though. And then as usual, just EQ at the end to balance it, and then Soothe. So that's pretty much what that chain on that is. And you might be wondering if I did anything to the vocal, and honestly, not really. I think I ripped this using AI, and then it's just like sausage fattener to kind of thicken it a little bit because I think it had lost some body. And then yeah, just EQ to balance it, but it's honestly nothing really. And I think we'll actually end with the build. So I just threw in some risers that I love. I often use a bit of the same risers because I think it's good to use. I won't say it's good to use the same sounds all the time, but I will say it adds consistency in your sound, and consistency is how you get kind of a brand. If you listen to any Avicii tracks, all of his builds sound the same. All of those transitions, those big sweeps and stuff and crashes, it all sounds the same, but it's him. So, find your own unique palette of sounds that you love to use and just keep on reusing them in different ways, and that's how you will get your own sound. So use some risers. I use, just some snares. I just used some snares that I chopped up. And I actually put an endless smile on the snare because I thought it sounded a little interesting. So it basically turned the snare into a riser. And then I have these hats that are slowly being brought in. Just kind of like adds some rhythm into the build, and makes, I think it, if you're gonna hear it live, you're gonna start to almost dance in the build up, and it prepares you for the drop, which I thought is kind of a cool effect. Then I also have the leads playing here, so again, another endless smile on them turns them into a riser. I turn the vocals into a riser with endless smile, and I think I turned the pads into a riser as well with endless smile. So it's essentially just a bunch of like evolving elements using endless smile, repetition, and just slowly introducing things and bringing things out. And that's kind of how I make my builds typically. So I think that pretty much covers the entire track. I wanted to just run it through really quickly. All of my elements are done pretty similarly. Really, my tracks are usually just about picking the right sounds, doing some minimal processing, and balancing everything really nicely. That way it's, well, for one, not a ton of work, but it also, I think, just makes things sound a lot better. So see if you can apply it to your own tracks. I think you shouldn't have to do a ton of work on an individual sound. You should just know how to pick the right sounds. That's one of my big tips I'll say for the day. So if you have any questions about anything I did, just be sure to let me know and we can go over it next time. Be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.